Lysander Spooner wrote in Trial by Jury, quote, "For more than 600 years, that is, since Magna Carta in 1215, there has been no clearer principle of English or American constitutional law than that in criminal cases it is not only the right and duty of juries to judge what are the facts, what is the law, and what was the moral intent of the accused, but that it is also their right and their primary and paramount duty to judge of the justice of the law, and to hold all laws invalid that are, in their opinion, unjust or oppressive, and all persons guiltless in violating or resisting the execution of such laws." End quote. June 15th marks the anniversary of the sealing of what would become known as the Magna Carta, or the Great Charter, by King John at Runnymede in England. In the wake of years of disastrous foreign policy and abusive financial practices, dissent was on the rise among English barons subject to his will. A group appeared before the king in January 1215 to secure a written charter restoring traditional liberties that had been acknowledged under previous thrones. King John stalled for time, putting them off by promising he would give an answer in the spring. In the meantime, he tried to muster support from Pope Innocent III and to assemble an army. The barons returned in April, this time with even more demands, which the king rejected outright. Outraged, the barons withdrew their allegiance to King John and raised their own army to defend against the forces of the throne, who were ordered to put down the rebellion. That would prove to be a difficult order to carry out, with the barons' forces ultimately occupying London. Faced with angry noblemen backed by military force who insisted on documented limits on his power, King John was forced to sign a document at Runnymede in June, rather than surrender his throne. The Great Charter codified in writing for the first time in English law certain individual liberties for freemen and limitations on the power of the king. Minor revisions would be made in the coming days, and future kings would issue their own versions. However, Article 39 would be preserved through it all, laying a solid foundation for the provision of due process and trial by jury, not only in the English, but also in the American legal system. Spooner translated Article 39 as follows, quote, "No freeman shall be arrested or imprisoned, or deprived of his freehold, or his liberties, or free customs, or outlawed, or exiled, or in any manner destroyed, nor will we, the king, pass upon him, nor condemn him, unless by the judgment of his peers, or the law of the land." End quote. In contrast to modern juries, who are threatened and sometimes punished for doing their own research into the facts of a case and the penalty at stake, early English juries were self-informing. Jurors were selected in part on the basis of their knowledge of the facts of the case, or their willingness and ability to investigate them. This more scientific method of trial by jury replaced irrational forms of trial, such as trial by ordeal, in which the guilt or innocence of the accused was determined by subjecting him to a dangerous, often life-threatening ordeal. The concepts in the Magna Carta crossed the Atlantic Ocean with explorers and colonists. England's legal system served as a model for the legal systems of many colonies in America. Centuries after the signing of the Magna Carta, the American founders would look to it for inspiration and historical precedent in asserting independence when the protections colonists enjoyed in England were not extended to them as promised in English colonies overseas. Notable grievances listed in the Declaration of Independence stem directly from neglected guarantees in the Magna Carta, including the right to trial by jury. Nearly 800 years after its inception, the Magna Carta still influences modern American jurisprudence. According to the Baronial Order of Magna Carta, since 1940, more than 60 U.S. Supreme Court cases have produced commentary on the Magna Carta's role in American law. In Trial by Jury, Spooner discusses the full meaning and implications of Article 39. Quote, "The barons of England, sustained by the common people, having their king in their power, compelled him, as the price of his throne, to pledge himself that he would punish no freeman for a violation of any of his laws, unless with the consent of the peers, that is, the equals of the accused." The question here arises, whether the barons and people intended that those peers, the jury, should be mere puppets in the hands of the king, exercising no opinion of their own as to the intrinsic merits of the accusations they should try, or the justice of the laws they should be called on to enforce. Whether those haughty and victorious barons, when they had their tyrant king at their feet, gave back to him his throne, with full power to enact any tyrannical laws he might please, reserving only to a jury the country the contemptible and servile privilege of ascertaining, under the direction of the king or his judges as to the laws of evidence, the simple fact whether those laws had been transgressed. Was this the only restraint which, when they had all the power in their hands, they placed upon the tyranny of a king whose oppressions they had risen in arms to resist? Was it to obtain such a charter as that the whole nation had united, as it were, like one man against their king? Was it on such a charter that they intended to rely for all future time for the security of their liberties? No, they were engaged in no such senseless work as that. On the contrary, when they required him to renounce forever the power to punish any freeman, unless by the consent of his peers, they intended those peers should judge of and try the whole case on its merits, independently of all arbitrary legislation or judicial authority on the part of the king. In this way, they took the liberties of each individual, and thus the liberties of the whole people, entirely out of the hands of the king, and out of the power of his laws, and placed them in the keeping of the people themselves." End quote.